Hey guys, it's IT Ops Guy. I wanted to give you a quick overview of Active Directory and the monitoring of Active Directory from Solarwinds. So just very quickly, we've got this domain controller. It's the only one in my lab environment. It's called DC01. And if I come down here to applications, we can see that Active Directory is being monitored. It's in an up state. And so when you look at Active Directory on just a single node, it's really not that impressive. If I were to add an additional domain controller and hook up domain services between them, what you would see here is a couple of beautiful things, right? I mean, not only would the domain controller count go up to 2 instead of 1, but you would also see the synchronization between those domain controllers and whether or not that's functioning optimally. We don't see that here. Right down here is where you'd see it, the replication summary. But because there's nothing to replicate to, this area simply isn't filled out. So we can see our domain controller down here. We could see the items that it has. It's the primary domain controller. It's got the relative identifier master, infrastructure manager, domain name servicing, and schema master. It has all of the roles that a domain controller can have, with the exception of replicating to a secondary domain controller. But the way that you monitor Active Directory is the same as SQL or IIS. Essentially, this first page that you've got is the overall view of your Active Directory forest. And so this is all the information. Now you can see a lot of mine is at 0. It's really not that exciting. And it's not that exciting because this is a lab. I am the only user on it. I don't typically type in my password wrong. But if I were to change my password, you would see that here. If I attempted to log in and failed, you would see that here. All those types of things. And down here, you can see that the system time was changed. That actually happened twice over the course of a few hours. So where my host machine actually rebooted, the virtual machine came back up, that time changed, SolarWinds took note of it. It sent an event, which also sent an email to me letting me know that the time had changed. But it's all synchronized with time.windows.com. So I would expect for that to happen in those circumstances where, the host went down, therefore the virtual machine went down also. It's why larger environments have a hardware domain controller, is just so that doesn't happen. Whereas every other domain controller you can have can be a virtual machine. That's no big deal. It is nice to have at least one hardware domain controller, and I do not. So anyway, that is what we are seeing here. So not a ton of things to witness, unfortunately, when it comes to my environment. But you can see all these different items that the Active Directory monitor will keep track of for you. And you've got all the history of it and all that stuff. And any of these things that make the mouse turn into a hand, obviously can dive into further, and we can look at further. So if I wanted to look at the DNS server, I could look into that, and we can get a nice pretty graph and some information about the DNS service, the amount of memory it's using, so on and so forth. So a lot of great information is kept here, and in larger environments, it's very exciting to look at. In this environment where I've got a single domain controller, again, so it's not that exciting, and I'm not changing my password. People aren't failing to log in. None of those things are happening. But in my production environment, I certainly have alerts set up around some of these things, right? If somebody tries to log in and fails, and they get over a certain threshold, I want to know about it, because my office is so small, I could just walk over there and say, hey, what are you doing, Chuckles? Not everybody's in that way. Some of you guys have global companies. You've got companies spread throughout the United States. You can't just walk over. You might have to make a phone call or whatever and say, hey, I see this happening. We actually caught somebody trying to log into our environment once from a SolarWinds alert. We saw a bunch of attempted logins from an account that actually existed, but it was the wrong password. We saw like, it went 000, boom, like 191, and it was just huge. And so we saw that pop on SolarWinds. It caught our curiosity. We said, well, why is that happening? We dove into it, and sure enough, it was somebody trying to do something bad. And so you can use SolarWinds for that security purpose. And when you're monitoring Active Directory, those kinds of things get summarized for you and put into this table, and then you can take action based on the alerts. My suggestion would be to set those alerts to realistic values, right? Put this in your environment, let it sit and let it just watch. And then find out what those realistic numbers are, and that's what you should set your thresholds to. And anything above it or crazy below it, definitely look at those things, right? Because they are valid alerts. And just one more piece of information. If you're looking in here, you're like, man, I really wish I had ABC123. Chances are, if you click edit, you'll have that item. So if an account was deleted or changed, or account name was changed, account was disabled, maybe you want to know that. Maybe an account being locked out, you should know that. Attempt to change a password. Hey, that would be good to know. But there's tons of different things in here that you can monitor for. They are not all enabled by default. Maybe you want to know when an account was created, because that's important to you. If you can't tie that to a new employee starting, knowing a new account was created is helpful. How about attempting to reset a password or attempting to log on using explicit credentials? Account failed to log on. So there's a bunch of different things in here that you may be interested in, and you can just select those things. They don't cost you any more money. You can just select them and say, hey, I want to know if an account was disabled. I want to know if a password was reset. I want to know those things. So anyway, wanted to show you this again, just really quickly. I know it's not a huge overview or anything, but the stuff that you can do with this monitor is very helpful, and it is good to pay attention to, good to monitor Active Directory when you can, certainly on every domain controller. And then, we've got multiple domain controllers throughout our infrastructure in even different forests. And so, we monitor all of those environments, and you can do that with SolarWinds. So that's it, guys. That's all I've got for you for right now. I think my lunch break's over. So you have a wonderful day.